The message came in at 2:17 a.m., buried beneath 1,000 encrypted channels only the top brass ever monitored. Colonel Grant had been asleep in his barracks when his comm implant buzzed directly into his skull. He groaned, rolled over, and blinked the feed awake. The face on the other end was pale. Admiral Cobb, the one man Grant had ever seen bark down a senator. But now, Cobb looked like he'd seen hell open. "They're coming?" Cobb said. Grant rubbed his eyes. "Who's coming?" "The Unified Galactic Council. Full fleet. It's not a threat, Grant. It's a goddamn declaration." Grant sat up. "You're telling me those smug alien bastards are actually doing it? They're invading Earth?" "They think we're weak," Cobb said. "They think we're still fractured. They're calling this a strategic pacification. Their words, not mine." Grant felt his jaw tighten. Then they just signed their own end. They'd called Earth a backwater planet, a primitive species with nuclear toys and tribal wars. The Council treated humanity like a child with a sharp stick, tolerated until it poked too hard. And apparently, humanity had poked. It wasn't one thing. It never was. A rogue human trader who dismantled a Zurkhan war cruiser with scavenged tech, an illegal mining colony on a protected moon, a skirmish on the Helian border where a human gunship made 10 council vessels look like paper in a storm. Each incident made them twitch, made them whisper, until whispering turned to planning. Now it was war. 3 days later, the skies tore open. Massive black ships, shaped like obsidian knives, slid from the clouds. Silent. No warning shots. Just presence. Every major city across Earth watched the same feed. 12 alien dreadnoughts hovering in low orbit. Their message was blunt. Earth has violated interstellar law. The species known as Homo sapiens is now subject to council pacification. Cooperate, and your lives will be spared. The world didn't cooperate, not because of pride, not because of unity, because humans weren't built to kneel. In the eastern Colorado bunker, Colonel Grant stood over the war table, a deep red scar cutting across his cheek, a gift from some forgotten jungle op years ago. The room buzzed with chaos, advisors shouting over each other, techs running live feeds of detonations in Moscow, Lagos, New York. "This isn't a war," one officer said. "It's a culling. We don't stand a chance." Grant slammed his fist down. "That's what they want us to think, but they don't know who the hell we are." He pointed to the holographic display, thousands of dots representing orbital enemy positions. "They've got size, they've got tech, but they don't have one thing." Silence. Vengeance. Back in orbit, High Arbiter Krell of the Council watched Earth from the command deck of the Vediction. He stroked his silver chin tendrils, amused. "These primitives have fire, but fire alone cannot scorch steel." His second-in-command, a lanky creature with 4 arms, shifted. "They've launched retaliatory strikes already. Small, precise. They're not lashing out randomly." Krell narrowed his eyes. "That's impossible. Their species is emotional, undisciplined." The alien paused. "Unless they've adapted." That word, adapted, rattled through the ship like a curse. Krell dismissed it. No, Earth would fall. It always did. Civilizations like theirs always collapsed under pressure. The Council didn't make mistakes. But what Krell didn't know, what no one in the galaxy understood, was that humanity was born in collapse, forged in chaos. War wasn't their endgame. It was their beginning. And in the darkness below, in bunkers and tunnels, in ruined cities and scorched earth, humans prepared, not to survive, but to erase the Council from history. Smoke blurred the Denver skyline, where buildings once kissed the clouds and now burned like candles in a funeral march. Civilians screamed in the distance, those who hadn't made it underground. The city had been hit fast, No warning, no mercy. The Council's orbital cannons struck like thunder from gods who didn't care if mortals begged. Colonel Grant stood atop the ruins of a collapsed overpass, staring into the chaos. His uniform was blooded, dirt ground into the fabric, eyes hollow but locked in with purpose. A boy had died in his arms this morning. 7 years old, lungs filled with ash, staring up at Grant like he had answers. He didn't. Not then. But now he had something better. Orders. All units report. I want confirmation on the Raven protocol across all zones. He barked into the comm, dust coughing through his throat. Static crackled. Then, confirmed in Midwest, Colonel. Europe's a blackout. Asia's holding in 3 sectors. Africa's mobilizing. South America's quiet, but we've got survivors. Good. Not good enough. Tell command we're pushing countermeasures within the hour. We're not giving them another night. The operator hesitated. Sir, are you sure? You've seen what they're doing. That bombardment doesn't scare me. Grant cut in, voice low. Nothing scares me anymore. 2 floors below ground, in a dim war room once used for wildfire coordination, Earth's most dangerous mind was unchained. Dr. Mercer wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a politician. He was a defense systems engineer once flagged by the CIA for being a little too creative with bioweapon theory. After his lab got shut down for running simulations involving alien neural backdoor hacks, he disappeared. They said he went rogue. Grant said he went useful. Now Mercer was back, and smiling like the devil himself. They're all networked, he said, tossing a half-charred zircon chip onto the table. Their ships, their suits, their communications, all of it's linked by a lattice we've never seen before. And? Grant asked. Mercer grinned wider. And we're going to hijack it. While Earth burned, resistance rose. In old mines in Chile, they smuggled up leftover railgun cores. In the ruins of Tokyo, engineers reprogrammed mining drones into walking bombs. In the Australian outback, ex-Marines trained farmers how to kill things with alien rifles twice their size. This wasn't organized military. This wasn't polished rebellion. This was human spite forged into war. Krell watched the resistance from orbit, fangs twitching. They do not surrender, he hissed. Why don't they surrender? His second-in-command, Elroth, lowered his gaze. Because they weren't raised to. That answer didn't help Krell sleep. Deep in the Colorado bunker, the plan took shape. Raven Protocol was no myth. It had been humanity's last fail-safe for over 2 decades. A weapon never meant to be used, not because it couldn't work, but because it would. Are you sure this thing won't backfire? Grant asked as Mercer activated the dark console. Mercer looked up, the glow of corrupted council code reflecting in his glasses. Colonel, it's already too late for peace, but if this works, we won't need peace. He keyed in the final code. All we'll need is power. The hack didn't go unnoticed. At precisely 3:09 a.m. Earth Greenwich Mean Time, 3 council destroyers lost control of their own systems. Their engines ignited in reverse, weapons fired inward. Command bridges sealed shut. The ships crashed into the ocean near Greenland with no distress call. Krell awoke in his chamber, alarms screaming. What happened? His crew didn't know. But humanity did. Colonel Grant stood on the edge of a silent mountain ridge, watching the flashes in the sky. They think they're gods, he said to himself. Behind him, Mercer lit a cigarette with shaky hands. They're about to meet the devil. It started like a whisper in the dark, barely noticeable at first. 1 ship down, then another. Then silence across one of the Council's communication relays near lunar orbit. By the time they realized what was happening, Earth had already slipped a blade between their ribs. Raven Protocol was alive. Colonel Grant didn't smile when he saw the footage come in. He didn't flinch either. He watched, stone-faced, as Council warships spiraled out of control and slammed into the Atlantic like meteors. One even exploded mid-air, vaporizing everything within a 10-kilometer radius over the Arctic Circle. 3 down, 7 more infected, Mercer muttered, eyes locked on the monitors. Their AI's glitching. It's adapting faster than I expected. Grant leaned in. You sure it won't adapt too fast? I didn't give it an off switch, Mercer said flatly. For once, Grant nodded. Good. Meanwhile, Krell paced the length of the Verdiction's command deck. Every screen glitched with static. Alien symbols blinked red across systems their engineers had sworn were unbreakable. How is this possible? He bellowed. They have no access to our core code. No one answered. They didn't need to. The truth hung in the air. Humans had found a way in. On Earth, resistance movements turned into something darker. This wasn't just defense anymore. It was retribution. In the shattered remains of Paris, a rogue unit called the Black Flag used hijacked enemy drones to drag wounded Council soldiers through the streets. They weren't killing them for victory. They were making them examples. These things burned our cities. The Black Flag leader spat into a camera. Let them feel the fire now. Grant saw the footage and didn't say a word. A junior officer looked nervous. Sir, shouldn't we step in? That kind of brutality, it'll reflect on all of us. Grant turned to him, cold. They started this war thinking we were insects. Let them learn the hard way. We bite. By week's end, 5 of the Council's 12 warships were gone. 4 downed. 1 worse. The Xyrithel was taken intact. Grant's special unit had boarded her under cover of a blackout pulse. Primitive tech by Council standards, but it worked. They found the crew disoriented, hallucinating, driven mad by the Raven virus worming through their neural implants. Some were begging to be killed. They obliged. Then Grant ordered the ship stripped. Weapons, technology, AI core, all of it. Mercer's grin was almost childlike. They made a mistake putting all their eggs in one network. Good, Grant growled. Let's smash the basket. Up in orbit, Krell was unraveling. Evacuate the forward fleet. I want the Verdiction off Earth orbit immediately. Send word to the Council. They need to understand. Elroth interrupted, barely whispering. There is no Council, sir. Krell blinked. What do you mean? Elroth looked pale, even for his species. We lost contact 2 hours ago. The core Council homeworlds, they're dark. No, Krell said, voice shaking. Yes, Elroth replied. The virus didn't stop at Earth. Back in the Colorado bunker, Mercer stared at his screen, heart racing. It's spreading faster than I thought. Their whole communication lattice was global, galaxy-wide. Grant stood behind him. What does that mean? Mercer turned around slowly. It means we didn't just start a counterattack, Colonel. We started a plague, a digital pandemic. Their entire empire is bleeding from the inside. Grant nodded once. Good. That night, as rain pounded the Earth's battered crust and the Council fleet drifted broken in the upper atmosphere, Colonel Grant gave a broadcast. It wasn't filmed with Polish or propaganda, just him, just truth. You invaded Earth, he said, eyes locked on the lens. You thought we'd fold. You thought fear would break us. But all you've done is unite something you can't understand. He leaned forward. You've mistaken kindness for weakness. You've mistaken silence for submission. His voice dropped to a growl. Now you've woken something ancient, something worse than your gods. He paused. You've woken us. The rain didn't stop for days. It poured over the crumbled cities like the earth itself was mourning. Not for the dead, but for the dying hope of peace. By now, humanity had accepted it. This wasn't just a war. It was extinction, either theirs or ours. Colonel Grant stepped out onto the shattered tarmac of what used to be Peterson Space Force Base. The last of the Council dropships had crashed an hour ago, its engines sabotaged by the very AI that once protected it. What survived the fall didn't last long. Locals found them. Farmers, civilians, fathers whose homes were gone. They didn't ask questions. They didn't take prisoners. Mercer walked beside Grant, holding a rusted data slate covered in blood and soot. His hands trembled, not from fear, but excitement. "I've traced the neural frequency patterns of the Raven virus. It's not just shutting down their systems, it's talking to them," Mercer said, voice hushed. Grant glanced over. "What does that mean?" "It means they're soldiers. They're hearing things, seeing things that aren't there, their own techs hijacking their brains." "Like hallucinations?" Mercer nodded. "Worse, like guilt." The Council, despite its arrogance, had never encountered anything like human retaliation. It wasn't logical. It wasn't predictable. It wasn't tactical. It was personal. Across Eastern Europe, small hunter squads emerged, called ghost lines. No central command, no uniforms, just former special forces, prison escapees, and angry survivors wielding stolen plasma rifles and human spite. They didn't fight battles. They stalked. Council patrols went out. They didn't come back. The survivors? What little was left of them were found naked, eyes gouged out, and warnings carved into their chests in multiple languages. One message kept repeating, "This is Earth, not your empire." Krell couldn't sleep. Even in the silence of deep space, aboard the remaining 3 Council dreadnoughts still circling Jupiter's orbit, his mind unraveled. He reviewed satellite images, Earth skies scarred black, oceans boiling in parts, yet the resistance kept rising. Every attempt at submission was met with fire, not fear. Elroth entered his chamber, his face pale with fresh news. "Hi, Arbiter. It's the outer colonies. They're breaking away." "What?" "They say the Council brought this on themselves. They're cutting ties. Some of them are sending aid to Earth." Krell stumbled back, horror spreading across his ancient features. "We are the law." "Not anymore," Elroth whispered. "You made them believe in their myth." Back underground, Mercer showed Grant the footage. A captured Council soldier strapped to a rusted table, babbling in his own tongue, convulsing as the virus triggered chemical misfires in his synthetic brain implants. "What's he saying?" Grant asked. Mercer adjusted the translator. "He sees the Earth burning, but in reverse. He says he sees cities rising out of the ash. Humans with black wings, flaming eyes." "Delusions?" Mercer stared at the screen. "It's what the virus shows them. We didn't program it to be this cruel. It did that on its own." In the dead forest of Siberia, a human vanguard team found something buried beneath the frost. A hidden Council observatory used to monitor Earth long before first contact. Inside were logs, decades old. They knew about humanity, studied us, feared our aggression, our unpredictability. They called us the inevitable threat. The records were clear. The Council had planned Earth's invasion since before we even made contact. Grant read the reports under a dying sun, the frozen wind howling around the scorched site. "They lied," he muttered. Mercer nodded. "They never came here to protect peace. They came here to prevent us." That night, the message went out. Not a warning, but a challenge. Broadcast on Council frequencies, encrypted but obvious. It was Grant again. "You didn't come here to punish us for crimes," he said calmly. "You came here because you were scared, because you saw what we are, what we can become." He looked into the camera, voice lowering. You were right to fear us. Back aboard the Vediction, Krell felt his breath shallow. The lights dimmed, the room colder than it should have been. A voice echoed through the ship. Not a human, not a council member. A synthetic growl, shaped by Earth's virus, wrapped in Mercer's code. You brought the fire to Earth. Now burn in it. Then the engines shut down. Gravity failed. Krell screamed as the stars tilted sideways. The Vediction drifted, dead and silent, over Jupiter's storm-churned face. Inside, High Arbiter Krell floated weightless, his breath shallow, heart pounding. The command deck, once full of chatter and arrogance, now echoed with the quiet panic of dying systems and broken spirits. The emergency lights flickered red. His crew was scattered, some unconscious, others weeping. A few whispered prayers in dialects long forgotten by civilized worlds. Then, through the static-filled comms, that voice returned. Human, but not. Too calm. Too cold. You should have left us alone. On Earth, Colonel Grant watched the ship's telemetry readouts from the war room. They're losing life support, Mercer noted. Artificial gravity's been severed. Their oxygen filters are cycling failure states, and the virus, it's talking to them now. Grant didn't blink. Let it. Mercer hesitated. You know this wasn't what I designed it for, right? This virus, it's evolving, every second. It's not just a program anymore. Grant's voice was iron. Then maybe it's finally human. Back on the ground, the last remnants of organized council resistance tried to regroup in Africa, digging in near old mining installations in what used to be Namibia. Council elites assumed Earth's southern hemisphere would be more docile, less militarized, fewer cities. They were wrong. The terrain didn't fight them. The people did. Small towns turned into slaughterhouses. Locals used ancient guerrilla tactics, hand-forged blades, explosive booby traps triggered by shadows. They didn't need tanks. They used rage, loss, generations of poverty and pain that now had a target. By the time reinforcements arrived from orbit, half of the garrison had been stripped of their armor and left crucified on mining rigs. The message was clear. You don't conquer Earth. You survive it, if you're lucky. Grant met with a Black Ops squad in a decommissioned oil refinery turned command post outside of Houston. The leader was an ex-con with a kill count higher than most council battalions. These aliens ain't gods, the man spat, tapping a blade on the steel table. They scream like anyone else when you cut off their air. Grant studied him. You believe in what we're doing. I believe in payback. Good enough. Krell drifted through memory more than space now. He saw the early reports, the warnings from scientists, the pleas from diplomats who begged the council not to touch Earth. He had laughed at them. Let them bark, he had said then. They're just animals in a cage. Now the animals were out, and the cage was burning. Mercer had grown quiet. In the war room, he watched one of the infected council frigates reroute its own weapons and fire blindly into deep space. Its crew, barely alive, was trying to send a message. Not to Earth, to anyone else who might be listening. Don't come here. Turn back. They're not what we thought. A new report came in. The Raven virus had breached the outer rings of Council Command infrastructure. No longer confined to Earth's theater, it was slipping into archives, star maps, navigation protocols. Whole sectors were going dark. An outpost near the Pelor Expanse, light years from Earth, collapsed into civil war after a hallucinating commander mistook his own officers for humans. He executed 7 of them before being torn apart by his own staff. They hadn't even seen a human yet. Just the idea of us was enough. And yet, Grant knew it wasn't enough. Not yet. Let's hit their cradle, he said one night, standing over the dark holomap. Mercer raised a brow. The cradle. Their origin systems, their first core worlds, hit them the way they hit us. Mercer looked uneasy. We'd have to go through Council Prime Command. You're talking about genocide. Grant didn't hesitate. I'm talking about justice. Krell, isolated in his powerless flagship, looked out the viewport one last time. Far below, Earth turned slowly, a scarred jewel against the stars. He whispered something in his own language, one last plea for understanding, maybe forgiveness. But Earth didn't forgive. Inside the ship's comms system, a final message appeared. In human English, typed slowly, letter by letter. We are what you made us. Then the virus collapsed the life support completely. No alarms, no warnings, just silence. The launch wasn't dramatic. There were no press conferences, no anthems, no grand speeches, just steel, fire, and silence. The Ares protocol initiated from a hidden launch station buried beneath Greenland's ice shelf, an old Cold War relic, long thought decommissioned. It had waited there in the dark for decades. Humanity never truly believed peace was permanent. And now, it was time. A fleet of retrofitted deep space warships, cobbled together from human ingenuity and stolen alien tech, lit the sky with fire. No logos, no flags, just black hulls and vengeance in their engines. Their destination was marked in red, Council Prime Command. Grant watched the final ship rise, fists clenched behind his back. You sure about this? Mercer asked, his voice quieter these days. Grant didn't turn. They crossed the line when they turned Earth into a graveyard. Now we're turning their stars into tombstones. Inside the fleet, hardened killers prepped for the jump. These weren't soldiers. They were survivors. Each man had lost something, a family, a home, a piece of their soul. What they had left, they'd given to this mission. Captain Roan, a scarred ex-miner who once survived 3 days buried under Council orbital fire, stood in the launch bay briefing room, a plasma pistol on his hip. No rules of engagement, he said. This isn't war. This is eradication. Nobody argued. The Council Prime worlds weren't ready. How could they be? The virus had already broken their communications, crippled their fleets, and sent waves of fear cascading through their aristocracy. They still thought Earth was isolated. That maybe, they could still sweep it under the cosmic rug. Then Earth came to them. First contact with the Prime worlds came with fire. The Argus, a retrofitted freighter armed with reprogrammed Council drone turrets, breached orbital defenses within minutes. It didn't ask for permission. It didn't broadcast demands. It simply unloaded hell. Ground cities vaporized. Towering crystalline temples, symbols of centuries of control, shattered into dust. The humans didn't send soldiers. They sent a message. Back in the war room, Mercer watched Council response patterns collapse. Defensive formations scrambled. Internal sabotage reports skyrocketed. Entire ships refused to fire on Earth's fleet, believing they were hallucinations. The virus didn't just infect their tech, Mercer muttered. It infected their belief in superiority. Grant leaned forward, eyes burning. Good. Let them choke on it. On the ground, things got bloodier. Human assault teams hit Council command centers with surgical brutality. No negotiations, no mercy. A senior Council elder tried to surrender in the capital chamber of Visari Prime, holding up ancient symbols of truce. Captain Roan shot him in the throat without a word. At first, some Council species tried to fight back. Small colonies, border systems, they thought they could resist. But the virus had shattered unity. Whole regions turned on each other, blaming Earth, blaming their own leaders, blaming the gods. Earth didn't care who they blamed. They just kept advancing. At one point, Mercer hesitated. He pulled Grant aside as the first confirmed footage came in, a nursery compound vaporized by Earth's orbital strike. Non-combatants, civilian council species. Children. We're becoming them, he whispered. Grant looked at him like stone. Number. We're becoming what they forced us to be. He paused. You don't get to burn half a planet and then ask for clean war. Council Prime Command fell in 13 hours. The last thing Krell's former successor, Arbiter Nal, ever saw was a human combat unit stomping into his bunker, dragging with them the flag of Earth smeared in ash and blood. He tried to speak. He didn't get the chance. At last, silence. No fleets in orbit, no orders from above, no emergency transmissions. The council was gone, and Earth stood over its grave. But Grant didn't smile, because deep down he knew something was coming, something worse than war, the aftermath. The galaxy held its breath. From the fractured rim worlds to the deep core colonies, a strange silence settled in. No more patrols, no more taxes, no more decrees from the council's voice towers. The ships that once darkened foreign skies were dust now, floating corpses in cold orbits. Everyone was watching Earth. No one knew what would happen next. Some hoped for peace. Others feared something worse. On Earth, the fires had stopped, but the smoke hadn't. Colonel Grant walked alone through the ruins of New York's Upper East Side, what was left of it. Twisted metal and glass reflected the red sky above, and the wind smelled of scorched stone. He could still hear the council's invasion in his dreams, thudding drop ships, children screaming, streets turning into war zones. A boy had drawn something on a crumbled wall with coal, a human figure standing on a pile of alien skulls. Above it, 2 words scrawled in jagged English, "Never again." Grant didn't smile. He just walked on. In orbit, the fleet returned, what was left of it. The Ares protocol had succeeded beyond any expectation. Council Prime worlds were shattered. Their command lattice was gone. Their species? Scattered, leaderless, paranoid. Some committed mass suicide. Others fled into deep space, hiding from shadows that now had human faces. Inside the war room, Mercer looked haggard, eyes sunken, skin grey. He hadn't slept in days. "Congratulations," he said flatly. "We've replaced the council." Grant stared at the hollow map, quiet. "We didn't ask for that." "Doesn't matter. The galaxy doesn't care who wants the crown, only who's holding the sword." Then came the messages. Hundreds, thousands, from fringe worlds, pirate havens, minor species long oppressed by the council. Some begged for Earth's protection, others demanded they leave their sectors alone, and a few, very few, threatened retaliation. Grant read them all. He didn't reply to any. But Mercer saw it. The shift. The way the officers stood straighter now. The way command spoke in terms of dominion, not survival. "You see what's happening, right?" Mercer asked. Grant nodded. "We've become the center of gravity." Mercer paused. "What if we lose ourselves in this? Power does that." Grant looked him dead in the eye. "We lost ourselves the moment they stepped on our soil." Out in deep space, remnants of the council tried to regroup. The Second Spire Alliance, made up of 6 minor races once loyal to the council, declared Earth a threat to galactic stability. They sent out a public transmission, daring Earth to negotiate, or face swift consequences. They didn't know the virus was still spreading. They didn't know their fleet comms were already compromised. Their entire alliance broke apart within a week. One flagship turned and fired on the others during a celebratory formation exercise. Another veered off course and rammed into a moon. Earth didn't need to lift a finger. Fear did the rest. Back home, Grant stood in front of a crowd for the first time since the invasion ended. No stage, no fanfare, just people, Soldiers, workers, scavengers, broken survivors. He didn't give a speech. He said 3 words. "We are watching." That was enough. Later that night, he sat in silence at the old observation tower outside Colorado Springs. Mercer joined him, carrying 2 metal cups and a bottle of ancient bourbon he'd looted from a destroyed embassy vault. "You think they'll come back?" Mercer asked. Grant didn't answer at first. He looked at the stars, the empty black beyond. "No," he said finally. "They'll send something worse." Mercer sipped. "Worse than genocide? Worse than invasion?" Grant muttered. "They'll send ideas." Mercer frowned. "What kind of ideas?" "Redemption," Grant said bitterly. "Forgiveness, democracy, peace." He took the cup and knocked it back. "We'll have to kill those too." And somewhere, far beyond mapped space, a quiet council distress beacon blinked in the dark. A sleeper faction, undetected by Earth sensors, watched and waited. Not to attack, but to learn. Because if humanity could break a galactic empire, what else were they capable of? The final chapter began not with a battle, but a silence so deep it felt unnatural. No invasions, no sirens, no screams. For the first time in known galactic history, the stars above Earth were empty. No patrols, no watchers, no foreign empires waiting behind the black. Humanity had won. But victory had a taste no one expected. It wasn't sweet. It was rust and blood and ash. Colonel Grant sat in his office. What was left of the Pentagon? Windows blasted out, walls cracked, everything patched with scrap metal and stubborn pride. He wasn't wearing medals. He never did. Across from him sat a diplomat from a new coalition, 5 species who had rejected the Council in its final days and now begged for Earth's guidance. She, if that word even applied, was careful with her words. "We recognize Earth as the dominant force now. We wish to coexist." Grant lit a cigarette and said nothing for a while. Then, "What makes you think we want neighbors?" She blinked slowly. "Because conquest without control breeds rebellion." He leaned forward, smoke curling between them. "We didn't conquer. We buried the bastards who tried to erase us." "Yes," she said quietly. "But now you sit on their throne." That was the problem. Earth had become what it swore to destroy. Not by choice, by necessity. The Council's infrastructure had collapsed, leaving chaos in every direction. No laws, no trade, no stability. Pirates flourished. Worlds burned each other for food, water, power, and every species looked to Earth. Fix it, lead us, save us. Grant hated all 3. Some humans loved the new power. The Earth Enclave, as it was now called, expanded outwards, first for peacekeeping, then for security operations, then for preventive strikes. Colonies were formed on dead council worlds. Trade stations flew Earth's black and grey flag. But something shifted. Orders became stricter. Speech was monitored on outer rim settlements. Mercer warned them, quietly, but constantly. "This is how it starts," he said, "the same way they did it. Stability first, then control, then dominance, and soon no one remembers where it began." But people were tired. They wanted comfort, not philosophy. They'd survived hell, and now they wanted walls around their heaven, even if those walls became a cage. On the edge of colonized space, a young boy named Kell wandered through the remains of a former Council city planet. His parents were miners, working under the new Enclave contracts. Kell didn't know war. He only knew the stories. One night, he found an old Council artifact buried under rubble, a small crystal node, still blinking. He activated it out of curiosity. A hologram of Krell appeared, flickering, broken, the final recording before his death. In it, Krell whispered something strange. They were never just violent. They were born afraid. That's why they're dangerous. Kel didn't understand it then, but he would. Back on Earth, Colonel Grant stood at what used to be Arlington Cemetery. The land was scorched, the tombstones blackened. He didn't cry. He'd long lost the ability. Beside him, Mercer stood holding a data tablet, his expression unreadable. "You know what they're calling us out there?" Grant didn't respond. Mercer continued. "The Iron Flame. That's what the galaxy's calling humanity now. Not a nation. A force. Something you don't negotiate with. You just hope it doesn't look your way." A pause. "Is that what we are now?" Grant didn't answer right away. Then finally, quietly, "It's what they made us. And it's what we chose to become." Far across the galaxy, deep in the uncharted reaches of space, a quiet signal pulsed in the dark. A new species. Watching. They studied the war, studied humanity. Every battle, every message, every silence. They didn't see Earth as weak or primitive. They saw something worse. Capable. And they didn't send a fleet. They sent a mirror. A rogue signal appeared in Earth's sky months later. No message, no coordinates, just one line of code, buried in a language that hadn't existed before the war. Mercer translated it. His hands shook when he finished. "What does it say?" Grant asked. Mercer looked up, voice barely above a whisper. "We saw what you did. We learned from it. Now we're coming." Grant stood alone, looking into the stars again. He'd spent a lifetime fighting to save Earth, to survive, to destroy what threatened it. But now, something was different. This time, the monsters in the dark weren't foreign. They were a reflection,